Once you have played your fair share of Mayhem 3, you will have noticed that certain NPCs are really struggling once you reach the later stages in the game. The pirates are getting stronger, the player is getting stronger, the terraformers are getting stronger. The only factions which aren't getting stronger are the main empires. There is usually one or two which do quite well, and the others get pushed around and into the defense, and then most of their traders don't reach their destinations anymore, get intercepted by pirates, and they become an easy target. It's usually starts very small. They are losing some critical fleets, and then they don't have the means to rebuild them, and just tumble and get gobbled up by other empires. And the new coalition feature that Jubob added last year does really help, but I think there could be done a bit more about this issue. And so I came up with this new mechanic, which is heavily inspired by Europa Universalis 4, which has a similar feature. And it's basically the concept that if a nation is losing territory in a war, they become more desperate and determined to win some of that back. The factory workers are willing to work overtime, the population is buying war bonds, the entire nation produces less consumer goods and militarizes more and shifts towards military production. A larger share of the population is working in the arms factories and stuff like that. So you can't really model that in a video game. So in EU4 it's also only a simple modifier, a discount for production basically. And in Mayhem 3 this will be a similar thing. So if a faction is losing a sector by whatever means, all their remaining outposts will get a small but permanent level up to their production specialization. And that means that their ships and equipment can be produced cheaper and quicker. So let's take a look at my current game. Before I added this new mechanic, this entire central part here was still owned by the Paranids. And then they lost it to the Xenon. And this was basically a big trauma for their population. They got kind of fanatic, and they are now really determined to win wars and be efficient fighters, basically. So if we take a look at the debug option to show NPC outposts and see a random Paranid one, we can see the specialization level is at 55%. Usually the NPCs only have 50%, so they always cheated a bit. The player has to start with 0% and has to build that up, learning by doing. So if you construct something with your outpost, the entire process gets more efficient over time. The NPCs didn't have that. They always had a flat bonus of 50%. This is the maximum that the player could have leveled up to. But this outpost, the population in this Paranid outpost basically has seen the loss of 5 of their faction sectors. And now they are thinking, oh man, we have to step up the game and work a bit quicker, so they get another 5% bonus. But there should be outposts which are much higher level than that. Let's take a look. Yeah, so this one is at 75%, Light of Hope. Now where is that? Yeah, you can see it's in the upper leftmost corner, and this is traditional Paranid homeland, you could say. So they owned this entire area since the start of the game. Nothing has changed here. These have always been Paranid sectors, and this is what you're gonna see over the course of your game with this new mechanic. There are certain areas which will level up very high, because the bonus is always tied to a specific outpost. if that outpost gets destroyed and rebuilt by whichever faction, this new outpost will always start at the base level again. So you have these frontline areas where factions are fighting and outposts are getting destroyed and rebuilt all the time. These areas will remain rather low level. But if a faction gets pushed back to, let's say, this line here, the traditional Paranid home turf, they have a chance to fight back because their remaining outposts will likely be at a very high efficiency and they can build fleets even if their economy is kind of crap at this point. The Boron and the Teladi should also be very high level, but I didn't have this mechanic active when they lost most of their sectors, so their outposts are also at base level. And that's why the Paranid are really scary in my game now. They are the biggest faction and the most efficient. Usually only the factions which are losing very hard will be the ones with very high production bonus. There are certain areas which are naturally going to be at a higher level, and those will be the ones which are deep inside a single faction's territory. So not at the borders, but in their core territory. These outposts are the most secure usually, and these are the areas which will be very valuable for the faction. And if they get pushed back to this area of space, then they have a serious chance to rebuild. It won't be like real cheating, so they cannot get fleets for free, but it will be much cheaper and gives them a fighting chance. And what's really great is that this bonus kind of fades away for very large empires. So the Paranid, they have this very high level area right here, but they also have rather low level areas at the front lines where the outposts are rather new and not leveled up. When the Paranids build a fleet, they often do that at the border. So the NPCs won't consider, okay, I have this sector which is very high level, I built my fleet here. That logic hasn't changed, so as a faction grows, this production efficiency will naturally go down because they build most of their fleets in low-level outposts again. So this bonus gets balanced out. It should not make certain factions which are already very powerful even more powerful. It benefits mostly the factions which really need it. So that will make all NPC factions much more competitive against the player, against terraformers, against pirates, whatever. And as the game goes on, certain areas will level up and the entire war intensifies because more military ships can be built in a shorter amount of time. And I think that's a good thing, making the entire game world more dynamic and also scale a bit up in difficulty over time, because it was really very easy for a player who has made it over this initial hump and had a few powerful fleets at the ready. You can just outmaneuver most NPCs, and if they cannot rebuild what they are losing, then it's getting really easy and boring in my opinion. So I think this is a very good change. And I have another big feature which is concerned to the Yaki, and we can already see that they are making some progress in my game, but that will be the topic of tomorrow.